Welcome to another episode of the MH Energy Exchange. I'm fortunate to be here today with Senator Matt Dolan. He represents portions of Cuyahoga County in the Ohio Senate. Matt, we talked last episode a little bit about renewable energy, and I thought we would, if we're talking about energy, we have to talk about shale.
All right.
My understanding is Jobs Ohio is doing an economic impact analysis of the shale industry, and they're going to come out this week, next week, with just an outrageous number of total investment by the industry in Ohio, perhaps over $50 billion in the last 5 years. I'm just curious from your vantage point as a legislator and a legislator from Cleveland, which is really on the fringes of that industry. I mean, what's your sense of the General Assembly's awareness of the impact of shale, and is it delegated mostly to Southeast Ohio, or is it something that clearly the whole General Assembly is aware of?
Well, that's an interesting question for me, having coming back to the legislature now when shale really wasn't a factor. So first, that's a great number, and we need to do everything we can to continue to promote it. There's two attitudes towards shale. One is it a growing industry and business that's going to help increase our energy portfolio in Ohio and perhaps replace some of the old standards? Or is it a source of revenue for the state for other important state objectives? And of course, the executive branch is leading that, and the legislatures are saying, no, why would we tax a business that's just at its infancy as you look at the big spectrum of things? And we want to encourage that investment. I believe the legislature gets it. There's a third component, perhaps, of the environmental side. Is are we doing it? Are we doing it correctly? Is there downstream impact on the environment? And from my standpoint, it seems like everyone is aware of all three. And I think people are mostly excited about the idea that Ohio has a unique opportunity to take a lead in its industry.
Right. So is the number of zeros, though, is it, because I'm somewhat surprised that I don't read more from the Cincinnati Enquirer or the Toledo Blade. We have this industry in Ohio where, they're doing billions, and I mean, it used to be if you had a project that spent $100 million in the state, everybody did cartwheels and it got front page news, and now we need to add a couple zeros to that number to reflect this industry, but I don't see the same enthusiasm. And maybe you already touched on it. Is it the environmental issue that?
So I think it's twofold. In your first question, you described that your Cuyahoga County is on the fringes. Well, right. Imagine the rest of the state. They're not even. This is foreign to them. Mm-hmm. So it's a source of revenue. We have this business. Why aren't we taxing it? And then two, it is, what about all these environmental issues? What about contaminated water? Which are all really, really important issues, but they're not mutually exclusive of each other.
Right.
So I think that's the main reason you don't see the driving factor. They're not heavy media areas where the mm-hmm. shale's located.
Right. It's interesting, though, today there's this debate in the General Assembly about nuclear, and you have the Ohio Oil and Gas Association weighing in against those bills because they want all the gas-fired generation to be built. So you have a face-off between the old nuclear, zero emissions, and the new shale, lesser emissions and coal. How are people feeling about that debate?
It is an interesting debate. Who's for government, who's not for government? It seems to change every day. The nuclear plants provide about 11% of our state's energy, and because of the work we've done in promoting alternative energy and the investment that the shale, I don't think replacing that 11% is going to be difficult. So now the factor is, okay, do we want nuclear part of our portfolio? Will those jobs, and there are substantial, we're talking mm-hmm. about thousands of jobs in communities that will be impacted, is that a factor? But I don't feel a lot of enthusiasm to pick winners and losers, and
right.
we are certainly picking we're picking a huge winner if we give them a
Right.
tax credit.
Right. I was at one of the hearings last week, and there was a question asked along those lines that we have a portfolio standard that does seem to try to pick some winners in the renewable industry. You know, why is it wrong to have this legislation that's supporting an industry? And then I heard the CEO of First Energy say, just to be clear, if these plants go away, they will never, ever come back, which I thought was somewhat compelling. I mean, it is an important industry, and if they are going to go away forever, I mean, obviously everybody needs to think about that. But I also didn't hear a guarantee that they would stay if you passed the legislation.
Well, I was going to ask that, and second is, if an industry can only remain because it's heavily consumer subsidized, but because of government act to create the subsidy, is that a business worth saving?
Right.
These are the debates we're going to have. Again, I think if we look at it all together and where we want to be as an energy state,
Right.
I think we can survive without that 11%.
Right. And it's interesting, though, again, coming back to shale, which has only been around for 7 or 8 years, I'm not sure the debate is the same if shale's not here. I mean, the shale people are in the wings saying there's 10 gas-fired generation plants that are ready to be built to replace these nuclear facilities. Obviously, that wasn't going to happen 10 years ago. And, so is that compelling enough?
Well, it depends what side of the aisle. I mean, so 10 natural gas plants aren't as low as emissions as 2 nuclear plants.
Right.
But 10, power plants, first of all, the job creation is in the construction. But then if we become an energy reliable state, that's another, attitude for the governor, whoever the governor is, can go out and sell why you need to come to Ohio. We have low cost energy.
Right. So just last question. The House said that they were suspending hearings on their bill, on their zero emission credit bill. I haven't heard the same pronouncement from the Senate. Do you have a sense that the Senate will continue with hearings? And
that I don't know, but as we film this, we are 6 weeks away from passing a state budget, and I think that's going to dominate the next 6 weeks of our agenda in the Senate. I don't know whether leadership is going to try to balance the two out or not, but my guess is the budget will win out.
all right, I lied. So one more question. So there are oil and gas provisions in the budget, a number of them: drilling on state lands, unitization, drilling in parklands provision. Any sense of, you're on the Senate Finance Committee, any sense of where that's all going?
So unitization, I don't think has a lot of enthusiasm. It doesn't with me. I think, in fact, I drafted an amendment to pull that out. The timelines, I think are okay. I think we need government to start working at the speed of business.
So the unitization timelines, you mean?
Yeah.
So your amendment keeps those?
Keeps the
I
timelines,
see.
but does not allow for government property to be automatically included
Okay.
in the pooling process.
Right. Okay. I think we're out of time. But thank you for joining us,
Thank you.
and thanks our audience for joining us on the MH Energy Exchange.